Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Marc and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. I'm your host, Justin Wolf. I'm joined by always as my co-host, as always, and I speak English well, Marc Regala. Marc, how you doing tonight, buddy?
And Justin, how are you doing?
I'll hopefully speak English better throughout our podcast tonight, but, let's not set that bar too high. So.
That's all the Halloween candy from a couple weeks ago.
Must be. There's a constant sugar rush. It's incredible. I haven't been able to sleep for days, but I think that's diagnosable. So, don't worry about me and my pixie sticks. We're good, man. No, but all jokes aside, I think this is a really, we're kind of entering that time of the year where it gets really challenging. It gets really difficult. Yeah. And things can just kind of sneak up on you. And I think that's really when tonight, I think us kind of diving into really how do you navigate the holidays, the changing seasons, and really safeguard your recovery in the process, because there are a lot of things that are outside our control that are happening in this world. And like they always say, right, control the controllables, or like they say, I think that's what you say, Marc. So,
oh, I learned that. So that is what they say.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. But hey, got to give credit where credit's due. I think, and I know you and I were kind of talking about this earlier, just, the darkness that sets in so much earlier. The daylight gets shorter. The night creeps in a little bit earlier. You wake up. It's still dark outside. And that's a big challenge. And that's a big setup in the sense of just the way it impacts your mood. Like, it's hard to be upbeat, positive, feel good when you're shrouded with darkness. And it's a real reason why we talk about like seasonal affective disorder is a thing. When you get the changing of the seasons and all of a sudden now those symptoms of depression are present and start showing up, and things get a little bit more difficult to do those day-to-day tasks and manage those responsibilities. And so I was kind of curious to Marc, what your thoughts are, man, with it getting darker earlier now.
It's definitely a tougher time of the year. I mean, there's no doubt about that, because not only do you have the darkness earlier, but, you got the holidays approaching as well, which we're going to get into as well. And with the holidays approaching, you got a wave of emotions. Some people love the holidays. Some people get a little depressed during the holidays because of memories, thinking back to when they were married or when their kids were younger or maybe when their parents were alive or what have you, and then, the calendar flips over to January and you got the holiday hangover, and you still got the darkness, So it's definitely a tough time of the year. And we recorded a podcast a while ago talking about being proactive in recovery as opposed to reactive in recovery. And I think that that's so important. When the deeper you get into recovery, we talked about this, you're gonna know your tendencies. So for like me personally, the preparation for this and the approaching holiday season, because that is tough for me, kind of started already. It started probably about a good month ago, with some of the things that I was doing. I tried to do, an uptick a little bit and going to meetings just for myself outside of the support groups that we run together and the podcast that we record. I've been hitting the gym in some instances a couple times a day, just because, again, that's like therapy for me. My diet's been pretty much spot on, and I've really been trying to focus, on my mental space, focusing on positives and positive affirmations and shifting the narrative in my brain, knowing, what's basically approaching, which is, the holiday season along with the short days and the colder temperatures.
Oh,
we can't forget about that too. You're going to be going into hibernation. Hopefully we got a mild winter, but if we don't, you're going to be inside a lot too.
Right. I think you kind of hit on some key things there, man. We were kind of talking about like just the importance of like that structure. Like, what helps you feel good and what helps you thrive and succeed. And it's really kind of tuning into those things and making sure they're showing up day in and day out, which is critical. Because when we're talking about like what's the first stuff to go when things start getting really difficult or life starts feeling really hard, we start letting go of those things that really
Yeah.
we kind of connect with, that make us feel good.
Yeah.
And so that's especially when it's getting darker outside, and it's like the perfect recipe for like depression and that seasonal affective disorder to kind of creep in. Because what do you want to do? You want to disconnect. You want to isolate. Your social world becomes a lot more restricted. We start pulling away from those things. Like everything you just listed is incredible. And like those are really, we're talking about like tethering ourselves to like these supports for recovery. Like you're listing it. Like mind, body, soul, fantastic, community, connecting. And those are the things that really during the holidays are so critical and so vital to really making it through a very challenging time, because we know what the most challenging thing in this world is: relationships. And having relationships with another person, let alone what most people will come back and say like the hardest thing I have to do and I really don't like about the holidays, but I love it, is having to see my family. Like that is the thing that I've heard day in and day out people just talk about with dread, knowing that history, based on whatever's gone down, hey, maybe you didn't show up like, at 100% that day. And it was one of those days you'd rather like wish that, you had the wand from Men in Black. You could just wave it in front of your entire family's face and just they would forget that ever happened. But like they don't forget. So it's just like now you show up and it's like the holidays and people are looking at you cross-eyed wondering, hey, let's smell them. Let's just step back and observe and watch. And that's not a good feeling. That's not comforting. That's not supportive.
No, it's not supportive. Especially early on, because I mean, you got all these unresolved issues on the inside, and you're trying to feel comfortable with yourself again, and you kind of feel like you're being judged and things like that. But I think that the further you get into recovery, or the deeper you get into recovery, you kind of welcome that. You kind of welcome that challenge, because it's like, I'm not going to falter. I'm going to keep moving forward, and you're going to see the best version of me, and I'm going to keep doing what I need to do on a daily basis. If you want to say prove you wrong, prove you wrong. I don't necessarily think it is proving wrong, but there are a lot of naysayers out there. A lot of naysayers out there that for me to this day, that sometimes still can't believe, that I've turned my life around this much and I've been sober this long.
Right.
But to me, that's motivation.
Yeah.
Just like the first holiday season, it was tough. I mean, it was really tough. And I felt like some people were sitting back wanting to see how I was going to react and almost expecting me to falter.
Right.
And for me not that was a test, because for me not faltering that very first full holiday season that I was sober and didn't take a step backwards, I think that was the moment that people, specifically like in my parents' case and my sister's case and so forth, like my closest relatives, are like, okay, he's serious this time. Because in the past, as I said before, I mean, there were ups and downs. There were little stretches of recovery here and there, or sobriety, I should say, not recovery, 3 months, maybe 6 months, 4 months, or what have you, because there was multiple visits to treatment, so you had that pink cloud effect. But I will tell you, I mean, the holiday season was a time of the year where there was always a falter. There was always an uptick in depressive thoughts, anxious thoughts, drinking, and drugging. And then once I finally got sober, and I really was only sober about 6 months, 5, 6 months before that first Thanksgiving hit. So, I mean, it was still pretty early on. Mm-hmm. It's still kind of walking on eggshells, if you will. So it was a test for me, but I think people were sitting back because, they needed to be, I guess, I needed to prove to them that this was different. And once I got through that, I kind of felt like I got a nod, from my closest relatives, saying, okay, he's serious this time.
Yeah. Oh man, it's even like, as you're sharing that, I'm just kind of thinking like this is like the only disease that you got to prove it to people, right? Yeah. Right? You got to prove it that you really don't want that, which is wild. It's just wild. Because any other disease, like people wouldn't step back, especially they saw you struggling, hurting, really in pain because of what you've gone through and the disease that you have. Like they would lend a hand even if they didn't really fully understand what's going on. And I think that's the part about like this disease that sometimes like even family and friends like early on, like it's not shared with them. Like we don't let them know like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. And I think that's kind of something that I've heard from other people be a challenge. It's like, look, I made this commitment to myself. Why do I need to tell this to other people? Why do I have to let them know where I'm at and what I'm doing? Because I'm afraid of the questions. And I think that's like a normal thing, like the anxiety, because every situation can kind of be played out in the mind before even entering that stage. And the reality is, a lot of times we role play these scenarios and we have this like heightened anxiety, and we've thought of every possible situation that could occur and how we can handle it and what we'd say and what we would do. And then you show up and none of that even happens because it's just our mind trying to like protect us from that situation. Yeah. So I think that's the part, knowing, hey, these dynamics, these relationships, this like, and I can speak for myself when it's like, hey, like showing up to family parties and looking like, is he going to get after it? He's going to get after it. And just kind of like you were talking about, like the test, and just kind of like there's other options available. And I think sometimes it's hard when you're looking at like family and friends that sometimes you end up kind of playing like a role, and there's kind of an expectation of the role you're going to kind of like continue to play. So when you step outside that role, other people might look at you a little awkwardly or differently, and you might feel a little bit different or uncomfortable because it's doing something different in a very same environment that you've been in before. And that's part of the challenge too with navigating this world, especially during the holidays.
It is. I mean, early on, I kind of felt that, you know, and my brain did go 100 different directions as far as what if this person says this, what if this person says that, or what have you. I think that you get to a point where you just don't care anymore. I mean, you're at peace with everything, if that makes sense. You care, but I mean, you don't care if people ask you those questions, is what I mean. Okay.
Right. It's like the thought in your head, like, please don't ask me about this. Please don't ask me about this. Don't bring this up. And it's like, hey, like I welcome it now.
You know, you just gotta. You know, I've been asked the questions enough time. I know what my response is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, it's what I choose to do. You know, I mean, I'd say in the past, I'm an alcoholic and addict living in recovery, and I've been sober for X amount of years, and it's a hobby that I don't partake in anymore.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that. You know, if somebody wants to bring up the past, oh my God, you're so different than you were before. Well, you're speaking of somebody that doesn't exist anymore. This is the new me. Accept me for who I am now. We've talked about that before.
Right.
You know, but it took a while to get there. I mean, it did. I remember those early feelings. I remember the first Thanksgiving. I remember the first Christmas. I remember the first New Year's. There was a lot of anxiety there. I do remember that. It wasn't that long ago. And then doing the work in the field that I do, trying to help others, and you hear them kind of express some of their feelings going into this time of the year, you know, with it getting dark out early and stuff like that. And I think that's why the living a life of service is so important, is because when you hear some of the comments they make, boom, it brings you right back to where you were during that period of time. It's almost like a memory jogger, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's a way that you never forget where you came from. And you respect what they're going through, and you try to give them guidance and help to get them through, you know, that season. But now, sometimes I make a joke of it. You know, we talked about this before. You know, I mean, just before the podcast started, you know, people are like, "Oh, you know, you're so regimented, or you're in good shape, or whatever it might be." I make a joke. I go, "Well, the first thing you're doing wrong is you're putting that poison in your body. Quit putting that poison in your body. Clean up your diet and hit the gym a couple of days a week. The human body's amazing. It's going to react."
Mark's recipe for success, everybody.
It comes straight up.
Yeah.
You're not going to attain what you want by putting the poison in the body.
That's not how you got those gains, Mark.
Guess what happens? They run away.
Yep.
And no more questions.
Yeah. They didn't even have a chance to talk to you about your chicken breast and brown rice. What a shame. What a shame.
I never got that far because they didn't want to put down the drink that's in there.
Well, but even like that example you just kind of gave me, like reminds me of just kind of like thinking about like this time of year, there's a lot of like work events
Yeah.
and work parties and getting together and seeing them outside of work and kind of enjoying the house. Like that's a huge stressor because now you got to mingle with coworkers, bosses, and there's alcohol present. And if you're somebody who's in recovery and like especially early on, like that setting can be a little nerve wracking. And what do you think? You got a thought? I see your head nodding.
Well, I mean, early on, I don't think you should. I mean, I hate to say it, I don't really think it's wise for you to go to those events. I didn't go to those events early on,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me a period of time to get there before I'd allow myself to be in that environment. And then when you are in that environment, you got to have your boundaries and you got to be protected. You get in, you show face, you mingle a little bit, you kind of play the game, the corporate game or whatever, and you get out. You're not going to be there later at night when people are tying one on and they're going to the bar and they're trying to get everybody to do shots and things like that. And then again, the further you get into recovery, the more open you are. Now it's a situation where everybody I work with knows my story. So, I mean, honestly, I've had it where people actually will ask me, is it okay if I have a drink in front of you? Is that going to do anything to you or not? Which I think is cool.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I don't do what you want. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. It's not going to bother me. You're not going to see me sitting here till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, having dinner or whatever it might be, have a glass of wine, whatever.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, like, that's such a sign of respect where it's like, hey, I'm actually concerned of like, is what I'm doing going to impact you in a negative way? Like, I don't want to set you up. And that's kind of where the intention behind the question comes. So that's really cool. Like, that's the power of sharing your story and saying like, hey, like people actually care and people actually don't want to set you up.
But you also have to understand, in some instances you're sitting in a cubicle, your cell phone's next to you, and sometimes you do get phone calls throughout the course of the day from people that are asking for help or need guidance or what have you. So some of these people actually hear you on the phone talking to somebody struggling, and I think it opens up their eyes to the world of mental health, addiction, and alcoholism too.
Yeah. No, because it's like it's so common to be impacted by this or know somebody close to you that's going through it. And so to kind of hear that like somebody next to you has kind of got somebody else in that same boat, it kind of like breaks down those barriers or those walls or those ideas that you're like, I'm the only one who's possibly going through this or gets it. Like to hear that somebody else gets it and understands it is such a like eye-opening thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I want to connect with you because you understand. You know what this is like. Yeah. And I think that's part of the pull, especially this time of year. I mean, we're talking about like those darker days and everything that goes on, like especially like with work. And we know that one of the biggest things that's associated with this time of the year is stress. And that stress can be overwhelming with all these different demands and our own mind telling us what these expectations are of ourselves and where we need to be showing up and how we need to be showing up. Because it does a great job of judging and criticizing and putting these like bars in place. And so that stress can come from things that are happening currently in our lives, things that we believe are going to be coming down the pipeline, or just the stress of looking back in the rearview mirror and getting stuck in the past of what has happened, what's been some of the impact of choices that we've made that we are currently living with. Like that's painful.
The other thing too is, I mean, you start talking about stress, you start talking about trying to become a people pleaser and try to be a socialite, if you will. I mean, you need to know when to say no, and you got to have balance in your life. And remember, the areas it's okay to be selfish in is when it comes to your mental health and your physical health. And the thing about it is you can't be everywhere all the time. I mean, if you allow yourself to go to every single house party and a corporate holiday party and networking event and this, that, whatever, your calendar is going to be filled up 23 out of the next 31 days or 19 out of the next 27 days or whatever it is. I used to be that way.
Yeah.
I couldn't say no. It's like, you know what? I know exactly what my limitations are, as far as how many events I'm going to attend, when I'm going to get in, when I'm going to get out, and I'm never going to sacrifice my health. The health has to come first. The balance has to come first. And it's even more important to have that balance and be cognizant with your efforts, during this time of the year, with the darkness,
Yeah.
and the cold and the snow and, the stresses of the holidays. It's the same thing like with the Christmas gifts and stuff like that, man. I mean, I used to buy all these gifts. Now it's like, you know what? I mean, to me, it's not, my whole perception of the world has changed in recovery. I was just telling somebody this the other day. Yes, I buy Christmas gifts for people that are dear to my heart, but I'm not, it's within reason, it's within a budget. The budget's obviously a lot smaller now because I make a lot less money now than I did before. But you know what? I mean, I'm doing the best I possibly can, controlling the controllables, like you said earlier. I'm not going to stress about it. It's coming from my heart. They know it's coming from my heart. I try to be thoughtful with the gifts that I pick for like my nephews and things like that. And it is what it is. I mean, I try to focus on the meaning of the season now.
Yeah.
I wasn't like that before. I mean, that's what recovery does to you. Your whole perception of life and perception of the world and perception of different seasons completely changes. That's why I say I'm not that person anymore. I'm a completely different person now. Get to know the man that I am now.
Right. No, I mean, that's part of like that growth. And I think that's the part where you talk about boundaries is so critical because if like there's no boundaries in place and you're running around trying to please everybody, it's going to be like, well, at the end of the day, what's left for yourself? I mean, you really kind of set yourself up that way.
You're going to be mentally and physically exhausted. You're going to expose yourself probably to the flu because your body's going to be run down. You're going to feel stressed. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to have lack of sleep. I mean, it's a recipe for potential disaster if you think about it. Really, whether you struggle with mental health or addiction or not, I mean, this really is applicable to everybody. But if you get a mental health diagnosis or a dual diagnosis like us, where you got the mental health and the underlying addiction and or alcohol issues, that just catapults everything up to a whole other level.
Right. I mean, it's like trying to fill up a bucket that's got like a crack at the bottom and you're wondering why your bucket's never filled.
Yeah.
It's like you can't please everybody. You can't take care of other people if you don't first take care of yourself. And that's kind of like what the power of boundaries is and what those do is it empowers you to really support yourself during this time because of that higher level of stress and those other like competing demands this time of year that are present. And you get the other component when a lot of the impact, we were talking about the impact of mental illness and addiction and how this can impact other people that we've come in contact with throughout our life or even our direct family. And this can be a really lonely time of year and kind of get stuck in the way of like, these are the traditions I'm missing out on. These are the things we used to do. I'm isolated now because of what's occurred in the past. Or I've chosen to withdraw from these activities because these activities don't work out well for me. So I'm going to actually pull away from these things. So like a loneliness is a really common thing that I know creeps up and creeps into people's lives this time of year too.
Sure, and you need to know you're going to have those feelings. I have those feelings too, and I think that's where being proactive again comes into play. I mean, if you know that you're artistic, have some activities planned. That is artistic. Whether it's drawing or coloring or what have you. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to put this out there. Okay, I already decided what I'm going to do during the holiday season and the early part of the winter. We joked about it. We talked about me writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start writing a book. Starting probably this holiday season and during the winter months, and we'll see how much I get done. It might not be a lot. It might be the whole thing. I don't know. I got a buddy of mine that wrote 3 books on physical fitness, and he's like, once you start writing, he's like his first book, which was a big seller for him. He said he wrote like in 45 days. He just got enthralled in it and was able to just knock it all out. I don't know if that's me or not because I'm not really a writer, but I'm going to try something new. What the hell do I got to lose?
Right.
Going to keep me busy.
Exactly. It's going to structure your time. It's going to give you a schedule. I mean, it's also making sure that schedule doesn't kind of get off the rails because you're like, you know what, I'm good at this. I'm going to just write all night. Let it go.
Yeah. Because you have to understand, like during the summer months, like when I'm not doing my recovery stuff, a lot of times I'm, at the forest preserve lake, going on walks or doing like extra, all that's kind of taken away during the winter time. So it's like, what are you going to do to fill that void that's going to soothe your soul
Yeah.
Okay, calm your mind and not lead to potential bad habits. I'm like, well, I've been talking about this for a long time. I'm gonna try doing it. Might fail, but I'm gonna try. I don't know. What do I have to lose at this point?
Exactly. No, I mean that's an incredible thing to kind of commit to and follow through on because it's like, hey, it's also a way to kind of by saying, hey, by sharing your story, who knows how many other people that's going to really impact and help and support. And it's also going to help you structure your time. And it's also a way for you to kind of take care of you. And I think that's a big thing. We're kind of like alluding to all these different activities you're kind of doing. It's like, hey, these are all your self-care rituals you've got in place.
Yeah,
These are the supports that you really kind of identified work for you. And you're making sure that they're showing up in your day in, day and out life, which I think is critical because it's like, hey, you got to refill the tank at the end of the day because if you don't refill that tank, you're working with less the next day. And then who knows if you're just going to
yeah,
continually forget, I got to take care of me first. So
yeah,
that's the power in really having these self-care rituals in place so that you are consistently showing up and attending to your own needs. Because I know it's really easy to kind of put everybody else, especially this time of year, ahead of you and say, I'll worry about that later. I'll just worry about me, some other time. Right now, it's all about them, this, that, and the other. And there's always an excuse not to show up and attend to yourself. So that's part of making yourself a priority, especially this time of year. It's so critical.
life doesn't stop, man. It just doesn't stop. It's like you always it's like going to the gym. I'm gonna start going next week, or I'm gonna start going. January 1st. January 1st comes. Well, son or daughter's got a basketball tournament or
Yep.
whatever it might be. I don't know. I mean, it just that's how I lived. There was always a reason. Baseball tournament, softball tournament, work function, family party, work during the week, whatever it might be, and you kept pushing it back away, kept pushing it back away, kept pushing it back away. You just have to do it, man.
Yeah.
In a lot of instances, especially with the addiction and substance side, it's literally a matter of life or death. I mean, it really is. You just have to do it. You got to make yourself a priority. And, when you make yourself a priority, you're going to be a better individual for the people that you care most about. And you're going to be a better parent and a better spouse, better friend or employee or whatever it might be.
Yeah. No, I think you kind of hit on it there, man, where it's important because a lot of times the way we talk to ourselves during those moments, also we kind of get into this like mental tug of war where it's like, yeah, I should do this, but I don't need to. Or, yeah, this is important, but not right now. And so, like, we kind of get like playing both sides back and forth.
Yeah, I get that, but you also have to understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, I put everybody's needs. I was like that. I
Yep.
felt I put everybody's needs ahead of mine. They might beg to differ because they're going to say that I was selfish and got addicted. Not whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, I never took the time off of work that I needed to address my addictions and my mental health. You know, I mean, I was trying to provide for my wife. I was trying to provide for my kids. I was trying to go to their baseball tournaments, softball tournaments, all that stuff. I mean, everything that was important to me, I was trying. And I got my sales reps. They got to hit their quotas. So you got 30 balls in the air. You
Yeah.
know what? When one ball hits the floor, ball hits the floor, another ball hits the floor. Now it's like, uh-oh. And you know what? At the end of the day, again, this is from what happened to me.
Yeah.
Everybody that I was making a priority over myself
Right.
just scattered. And now you're left by yourself. So it's like, why wouldn't I make myself a priority now? Why I've learned.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the same for everybody, but that's just my personal experience, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
No, and I think that's part like you go through the process and you kind of learn along the way. Hey, there's a big cost to pay if I'm not putting me first.
I mean, I'm still a hard worker. I'll still give you the shirt off my back. I'm still there for my friends, but I'm gonna do the things I need to do first before I gotta do those things.
Right.
I gotta make myself the priority. I lived a long time, the majority of my life, not making myself the priority. I gotta make myself the priority now. And I feel by doing that, I'm getting stronger mentally, physically. I'm becoming a better human being spiritually. I'm finally becoming the person that I guess I wanted to become a long time ago. And I'm feeling more and more comfortable with myself. But again, that's why it's so important to be proactive during this time of the year because, you get to that point, you can't get complacent. Because if you get complacent, that becomes a very dangerous situation because if God forbid you have a setback, all that hard work is gone like that.
Exactly. And that's where it's like, those boundaries, having a schedule and really kind of following the structure that's kind of in place and really reminding yourself about, hey, I care about other people and I also care about myself. So how do I treat people that I care about? And I need to have that same structure, that same practice in place for myself as well, which I know, like I said, hey, I'll give you the shirt off my back. And I also better make sure I got another shirt for myself too.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think, Mark, this has been a fantastic conversation about just kind of navigating some of these challenges and some of these triggers and stressors and the emotional toll of what comes up during this time of year. It's getting darker, nights are getting longer, days are getting shorter, the holidays. And I think you've really kind of shed some light on just some really useful and helpful strategies for people to navigate and apply to their own lives to support themselves during this time.
Yeah, I just think it's important. Again, I'm sharing what works for me, and I'm deeper into my recovery than maybe somebody who's watching this and still maybe battling or in early recovery, whatever it might be. It's not a one size fits all. That's what I want to reiterate. You have to find what works best for you. And to find out what works best for you, you got to be willing to try different things. That's where, again, being proactive comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
I think journaling is important. I really do. Because when you journal, you start to see patterns. Like I said, with me, holidays have always been tough. Anniversaries of deaths of relatives have been tough, and birthdays of relatives that are no longer here have always been tough. So when I see that day coming on the calendar, a couple weeks out, I know what I need to do.
Right.
And, again, with, Thanksgiving a couple weeks away, Christmas 5-6 weeks away, and then you got New Year's and all that stuff, I know what I need to do.
Right. No, that's like the structure there, because I think it's critical when it's with all these different competing demands. It's easy to kind of default and say, I don't have time for that. I don't know where I'm going to find the time to kind of do this, that, or the other. Well, you start structuring your day, and all of a sudden you realize, there's hours of gap here that I can kind of fill it in with these things that really are important for me to be showing up for myself doing. And so I think that really can open people's eyes to kind of take that journey and to really kind of try and figure out what it is that really resonates with you. What makes you really feel good and in the moment, as opposed to these things where you're just kind of going through trying to pass time and wondering, how many more hours until I go back to bed. So that's the part of the power of structure, routine is just really, it opens up the door for possibility. And I think that's really what we're looking for this time of year, these possibilities to really engage and connect with things that bring meaning, some purpose, and some connection into our life during this time. So, Mark, any other closing thoughts, man? Sorry to kind of just dive in there like that.
No, the next, this is our last podcast before Thanksgiving, so I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your food, enjoy your football, enjoy your time with your family. Hopefully it's not too stressful. And when we get together the next time, we're going to be right around the corner from Christmas, which is so hard to believe to me. I can't believe where this year's went. So, but I wish everybody well out there. I really do.
Definitely. And we're happy everybody's joining us on these podcasts and then these discussions. These always air on the 15th and the 30th of each month. So be sure to tune in, subscribe to whatever provider you like. And Mark and I are open to any comments or suggestions you have for the podcast. So if there's anything you want to see us really kind of dive into and discuss, feel free to send that on over to namidupage.org/podcast. Again, namidupage.org/podcast. And you can connect with us there and let us know what that would look like. So, as always, thank you everybody for your time, your energy, and we will catch you on the next episode. So, Thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.